They weren't supposed to be out. Not that late, not that close to the convention center, and definitely not with a gas tank bike that looked too real for a kid to own. But that's the thing about a pack. Once one engine turns, all the others come alive. 4 kids, helmets thin as opinions, riding street to street under palm shadows, their mini bikes built to copy the big boys, tiny fenders, chrome stickers, taped on tank badges like Harleys, all rattling through West Palm Beach like cicadas with headlights. The new kid, Eli, had the one everyone envied, a squat mini with a real steel tank he'd found at a garage on Belvedere. It wore its dents like rings, and when he rolled the throttle, that little engine sounded grown. They'd been like this for weeks, rebuilding hand-me-down frames, stealing paint from older brothers, tracing iron crosses and eagle wings with a Sharpie until the shapes looked official. They weren't a club, not yet. They were the club's future. Kids who'd watched their dads wash soft ales on Saturdays and stare out at Okeechobee Boulevard like it was a runway. Their rides were imitations, sure. But that's how any legend starts, by copying the silhouette until it becomes your own. The pack's ritual had 2 parts. First, the loop, behind the strip centers, past the empty lots, along the chain link by the drainage canal, popping out on Georgia Avenue to take a victory glide past the glow of the Palm Beach County Convention Center. Second, the secret. When they got to the loading dock wall, Eli would kill his lights, they'd all idle to a whisper, and listen. Because some nights you could hear it, like a distant speaker testing a tone, a high metallic hum that lived inside Eli's tank, and woke up when they idled by the convention center's eastern wall. Hook or not, the timing had the kids half convinced the tank was alive, and then something happened that locked it in. A few weeks earlier, they'd seen the Stranger Things laser experience up in Palm Beach Gardens, the kind of show where the air turns red and blue and the music scrapes open some old hallway in your memory. Lasers drawing lines like a net over the crowd, the upside-down flickering to an 80s drum beat, kids in hellfire shirts pointing up and yelling when the Morse code lights flashed. It wasn't West Hawkins, Indiana, but for 1 hour the whole room tilted that way. The show ran at the IC Campus Theater on October 25th, and the kids rode home vibrating, headlights cutting through the night like tiny beams from the lab. After that, the tank hum wasn't just a hum anymore. On their first post-show loop, Eli coasted beside the convention center and the gas cap clicked by itself. Not once, like it was loose, but steady, like a finger tapping from the inside. The sound matched the laser show's last rhythm, a kind of stuttered code. And the others, Jace, Mia, and little Cruz, heard it too. The kids knew it long before the posters did. They'd been tracing circles around that building for months. Eli didn't brag about the tank. He didn't have to. Envy works without noise. Cruz stared at the weld seam whenever the pack stopped to drink Gatorade. Mia tried to pretend she didn't care, then drew the tank in the margins of her algebra notes anyway. Jace, the oldest, kept his cool, but only because his dad had a real road king and he'd grown up around steel. Still, even Jace admitted the tank had a pull. Every pack needs a totem. That was theirs. On a hot night with no clouds, they rolled the loop and stopped at the seawall of shadow behind the convention center. The concrete was still radiating heat from the daytime sun. They killed their engines. Eli unscrewed the gas cap and held it between 2 fingers. The hum rose up again, thin, glassy, like a tuning fork you can hear in your bones. And then the cap slipped. It didn't clatter to the floor. It hung. Cruz saw it first and grabbed Mia's sleeve. The cap wasn't touching anything. It hovered a breath above the neck as if something in the tank were pulling it upward. Eli swallowed. Jace reached out, tapped the cap, and it snapped down hard, magnet tight, like a mouth closing on a secret. They ran. Not far. Just out into the light, where a traffic cone and a palm tree could remind them the world still followed rules. On the walk home, nobody said the word haunted. They said magnet. They said metal shavings. They said maybe it's a speaker coil. But when you're 13 and the night feels electric, the names don't help. You know what you felt? The next day, the pack met in Eli's carport. They drained the tank into a salad bowl that used to be part of someone's wedding registry. It smelled like 100 cut lawns. Eli shook the tank. Metal hissed inside. Jace fetched a flashlight. Something rattled out. A circle of stamped metal, blackened with age, smaller than a coaster. The emblem was scratched but readable. Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Motor Unit. It wasn't a badge. It was like a challenge coin, the kind you keep in your pocket for luck or to buy a beer with the boys after parade duty. There was a number pressed along the rim. The kids looked at each other. "This yours now," Jace said to Eli, trying to sound casual and not like the hair on his arms was standing up. They didn't know it yet, but the Expo had booked the PBSO Motors unit to perform live demonstrations both days. Tight figure 8 runs, brake line drills, the ballet of big bikes. The coin in Eli's hand had found the only group in the county that would recognize it and not laugh, and maybe the only group that would want it back. That night, the kids agreed to one rule. They'd ride as a pack, and they'd take the coin back if anyone from PBSO asked. Until then, it stayed taped under Eli's gas cap like a heart under a rib. The humming didn't stop. If anything, it got stronger. And on certain blocks, especially when the breeze came off the intracoastal, the cap would twitch in time with something they couldn't hear yet. The jealousy wasn't mean, not at first. It was the usual kind. Cruz asking too many questions, Mia staring a little too long, Jace pretending to be above it while measuring the tank with his eyes. But envy has a way of making people test a line. 2 nights before the Expo, the pack paused by a storefront glass, and the reflection showed something strange. Eli's tank glowing faint, like a red ring at the seam, as if the metal were holding a charge. Mia clapped her hands over her mouth and laughed the way you laugh when you're scared and don't want to be. "Tell me you see that?" They all nodded without looking at each other. On Friday, vendor trucks began to roll through downtown. Banners went up. The convention center's doors yawned open and swallowed crates of merch. The kids threaded back streets and watched adults in event polos pace the sidewalks with clipboards. The Expo was real now, not a rumor. That night on their loop, the tank tone shifted. It went from hum to pulse, ... dash, ... the exact rhythm of the laser show's final number. Mia said it out loud. "It's tapping the code." Cruz didn't sleep at all. Saturday, the Expo's first day. Big bikes in rows, chrome like sunlight on water, and the kind of sound that turns your chest into a speaker. The pack stashed their minis a few blocks over and walked in with their helmets, pretending to be cousins of vendors so security would ignore the height problem. When the motors unit rolled out, green and gold bikes moving like seabirds, Eli's pocket vibrated. Not his phone. The coin. He put his palm over it. Heat. Not burning, but present, like a living thing. There are people who will tell you childhood is just a series of moments when you learn what the world is. Eli learned right there that some things call you by name. "Go," Jace said. He didn't mean leave. He meant step forward. Eli moved to the tape line by the demo area, coin in his fist, and waited for the run to end. When the last cone went still, a deputy with a salt and pepper mustache powered down and swung a leg off the bike. Eli opened his hand. The man's face changed, surprise first, then something else, the way adults look when an old memory suddenly walks back into the room. "Where'd you get that?" "Inside a tank," Eli said. "It found us." The man nodded like he understood words that weren't spoken. "That coin belonged to someone we lost. Long time ago." He didn't offer a name. He didn't have to. The pack had seen enough memorial patches to fill in the blanks. You bring it back? Eli wanted to say yes, to be brave in the way brave people look in posters. But something tugged at him. The image of the coin taped under the cap. The hum that had led them here. The feeling that the tank wasn't done talking. We're supposed to, he said. But I don't think we're done yet. Not until tomorrow. The deputy weighed that and nodded again. Then keep it safe tonight. Bring it here first thing Sunday. Eli put the coin back under the gas cap. The cap clicked like a goodbye that also meant see you soon. That night, the pack didn't ride the loop. They rode the long way from neighborhood to neighborhood, letting the city draw lines under their tires. They cut past ball fields and side street florists, past diners where old bikers bent over coffee like priests, past canals where wind bent the water into private maps. At each turn, the tank pulsed and the cap tugged, pulling them toward something they couldn't see. Mia figured it out when the road widened and the sky opened. It's not pulling us to a place, she said. It's pulling us to a moment. They landed back behind the convention center. The wall felt different now, charged. For a second, everyone remembered the laser show, the way light made a room into a signal. The hum surged. The cap lifted again and stayed. Cruz, who was smallest and least afraid of being wrong, whispered, "What if we're supposed to ride it?" Jace set his jaw. "Then we ride." They lined up on the service road, Eli in front, Mia, Jace, and Cruz fanned behind, and eased forward the way you do when you're touching a boundary to see if it breaks. The cap hung open, coin visible like an eye staring back. 10 feet. 20. Then the sound came. Not from the tank, but from the concrete itself, a thin singing like brake rotors when you've ridden a mountain too hard. The coin tipped. Something invisible grabbed the cap and slammed it shut. Eli braked hard. The others followed. A shadow peeled itself off the far wall. Not a person. The absence of one. One more step, and you'd call it a trick of sodium lights. One more step, and you wouldn't call it anything at all. The pack didn't run this time. They idled, engines whispering, and listened. The humming slowed to a steady heartbeat. And in that beat, folded under metal and ozone, they heard a word the way you hear a name in a dream. Back. Mia's visor fogged and cleared. "Tomorrow," she said into her helmet. "We take it back tomorrow." They barely slept. The morning crawled. Sunday rose like a red bulb warming up. The Expo poured in its final crowd. The motors unit lined up again, cones like white teeth on the pavement. Eli's palm burned now, the coin quiet in its place. He waited for the end of the sequence. When the last tire stopped, he stepped over the tape. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need one. He unscrewed the cap, reached in, and held the coin out. The mustached deputy took it in both hands, the way you hold a communion wafer you're afraid to drop. He didn't smile. He looked grateful and tired. Then he did something the kids would remember forever. He walked the coin down the line of bikes, tapped it gently on each tank, and slid it into a small black pouch. "Ride safe," he said to the kids. "All of you." The pack turned to go. Eli paused and looked back at his tank, expecting to feel empty. Instead, he felt light. Not hollow, but lighter than he'd been in weeks. When they reached the edge of the demo area, Mia grabbed his elbow and pointed. The gas cap sat flat, no twitch, no pull. And on the seam where the weld had run like a scar, a new mark had appeared, the faintest ring of soot, shaped like a coin's edge. If you're hearing this before the next big motorcycle expo hits the convention center, consider this your reminder. When the motors unit rolls out for demo runs, find a spot by the tape line and listen close. You might hear a coin make its rounds again. One more thing. About that laser show. People will tell you it was just lights and music, a traveling spectacle that blew through town for a night and moved on. They're right. And also not. because sometimes the show isn't what happens in the room. Sometimes it's the way the room stays in you, how a rhythm from a stage sneaks into a gas tank and turns four kids on mini bikes into a story they'll tell each other for the rest of their lives. More Haunted Throttle soon. Ride safe. And if something hums at the edge of what you can explain, listen.